Hello and welcome to another chapter of the Tao Te Ching. As we move through each chapter one at a time, you can find this all uh, in a single playlist. All 81 of these are going to be sitting in a single playlist. So if you wanted to, pick a number every day or however you want to engage, feel free. This is chapter 75. There needs to be a purpose. This sort of is a tilt of the hat or a tip of the hat to Viktor Frankl and and all of his work in logotherapy. So, I mean, I wrote it as that. I thought about like the title is. I mean, of course, Viktor Frankl existed well after the Tao, so the Tao didn't tip its hat to Viktor Frankl. I think Viktor Frankl, at least, probably knew a little bit about the Tao before he started, doing his work in logotherapy. But either way, we're going to look at 75. There needs to be a purpose. People are starved for purpose because everything they do is taxed. That being so, why would they venture to do anything? By being intrusive, governments corral their people, forcing them to make a living instead of simply living. People have no purpose when their purpose is appointed. Without purpose, why would they want to live? All of this is intrusive meddling. It robs people of their lives and lines the pockets of those in authority. So what we're looking at here is the tax that's levied on being different, being an individual, being opposed or contradictory towards the larger group. Anytime you want to be yourself, that in our society thus far, I have experienced in my 48 years, we want you to be yourself as long as it fits within the guise that we want. We don't want you to be yourself if you're a murderer. We don't want you to be yourself if you're a pedophile. We don't want you to be yourself if you're, an abusive addict. We don't want you to be yourself if you're, a bad person in our eyes. Right? We only want you to be yourself when it aligns with what I think you should be. Now that we look at this as governments in this verse, we do talk about governments, but we also talk about groups. I think AA could be put under these guys. I think any group, Republicans, Democrats, or intellectuals, or whatever, it doesn't matter. People are starved for purpose because everything they do is taxed. What that means is when you try to be yourself and you get feedback on that, and that feedback is damaging or hurtful or not what you expected or not supportive, that's being taxed. You're being taxed in some way. You if you want to be yourself, you have to take a certain amount of abuse. That's the tax we're talking about. Now, maybe you want to be yourself and you get supported in that in one area, but maybe another area you're being taxed. And so one area you can have purpose. The other area, maybe you have to rein it in. And now you got to make a living, right? Making a living in this verse is talking about I have to be something or do something other than that which I am drawn to do in my life in order to continue to survive. So that's what make a living means. So when we read through this, people are starved for purpose because everything they do is taxed. That being so, why would they venture to do anything, right? Every time you go out of your way to be yourself, to be vulnerable, to be who you really are, not any time, because some of those things are going to align, but some of those things are not. And because they're not, maybe you don't have an opportunity to talk about it. Maybe you don't have an opportunity to explore it. And And so by being intrusive, governments, but we can say groups here, right? By being intrusive, any group or any individual that is intrusive in your life is corralling their people. They're trying to corral them into a specific idea, because when the group knows what you're going to say, it can trust you. When you are, a live wire, well, the group can't trust you. So if you have people speaking for, let's say, AA, but they are they're not really convinced in all the things AA. They're not brainwashed completely by all of the things AA wants to say. They don't know all of the phrases, or they don't believe it. Like for me, I don't believe in the disease model of addiction. Well, that could be really at odds with some of the early AA sort of groups that I saw 20 years ago, right? And if I don't believe in the disease model, well, then I'm going counter to what they're trying to talk about. Am I then working for the group? No, I'm not. So the group wants to kick me out or subdue me and corral me to believe and bully me, quite frankly, to believe in the disease model so that I could benefit the group. Well, this is me making a living, right? Like I have to change my way of being so that I can continue to survive in this group, right? Me simply living is just believing what I believe, saying what I say, and being who I am. But by being intrusive, governments or groups corral their people, forcing them to make a living instead of simply living. Now I'm actually working for AA because I am changing my ideas and what I'm saying, and I have to suppress a part of myself in order to be a part of the group. Now it moves in people with no purpose. People have no purpose when their purpose is appointed. So if you can't just be who you are, and you can't trust yourself in being who you are, then the group is going to appoint you, and you can't trust yourself. You have to turn to the group. Now, without purpose, why would they want to live? Like, what do they care? Now they're hurting other people. They have no deep desire for their lives and what their lives are doing. They like it's being appointed to them. So they constantly have to like turn to the group and go, well, what do you want here? What do you want me to do here? I don't care. I have no drive or determination or anything. I'm just going through the motions. This is that apathetic adherence to a rule that we had read about in an earlier chapter. All of this is intrusive meddling and robs people of their lives and lines the pockets of those in authority. In one way or another, someone is benefiting from your not being you, and it's not you. You're only going to benefit from being you. And so the more influence you're under, the more you find yourself apart from your purpose. And so that's something that really needs to get looked at. And we need to be able to look at what is it, who is in authority, who's asking me to be this way, who's taxing me, and how are they taxing me? It's funny. Your kids, and when you were a child, you could have been taxed by other children. Why? Because they've already been corralled into something. You might find someone who, advertised alcohol for years and years and years, and you were like, oh, that person's cool, I'm going to do what they do. And then they come out and they say, I've been sober for 10 years. And then you're like, wait, what? Like, they couldn't say that because they were attached to something that was profitable, and they didn't care about you, right? Like, so all of these things are really difficult. It's really difficult to figure out who you are when you're under the influence of things. And you're going to be under the influence of marketing. You're going to be under the influence of big groups. You're going to be under the influence of the government. You're going to be under the influence of the local laws. You're going to be under the influence of your teachers and the systems that are in place. And the more you push against any of those things, the more resistance you're going to get, so that you can be corralled. And so there needs to be a purpose. You have to have a purpose within yourself to be you. And then that is who you get to be. Yes, you are going to be taxed along the way. You have to recognize that being you is definitely better than it's better to be taxed to be you than to live your life with no purpose. And that's what this is really saying. If you just take on the purpose of others because, oh, that job exists, so I'll get that job. Or I'll, like when you constantly concede who you are to be something for someone else, well, now you're out there making a living rather than just living your life. So there needs to be a purpose, and your purpose is worthy of being taxed for, because if you don't accept the tax on your purpose, then you give up your purpose, and there's really nothing. Then you're just making a living. You're not living. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that I hope I explained that. Lou's here wanting some of my attention. So I hope it all flowed really well. It's always hard to remember what the hell I said. Thank you so much for joining me for another chapter of the Tao Te Ching. That was 75. There needs to be a purpose. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.